Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. To the elites, thank you so much for your love and dedication. It all gets reciprocated right back to you. I'd like to take a minute and say that this channel is only me. I'm the one doing all of the reading, the editing, the posting. There is no AI ever used within my recordings. So, if you enjoy supporting hard-working content creators bringing you only their talent, not using AI, please leave a like, a comment, hype the video even, or join the family and hit the subscribe button. And remember to set your notification bell to all. That way you don't miss every time I upload a video. With that being said, it is now time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack or tuck in and get warm. And get ready for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Scary Stories. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. Or read the first story, there will be an ad. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. I was walking my friend's dog when this guy started following me. This happened about 2 years ago when I was at my boyfriend's apartment. He had about 3 roommates at the time. We'd all previously worked together and were friends, so I lived in the dorms at my college. At the time, my boyfriend and I were alone at the house. He had the day off and I was visiting him on a free day from school. His roommate's dog started whining, clearly wanting to go outside to use the bathroom. For reasons I've since forgotten, I offered to take the dog out for a short walk around the complex. The area where my boyfriend's apartment was located wasn't the worst, but it also wasn't the best. Still, I felt safe enough to walk the dog by myself, especially because it was broad daylight outside, and I was wearing a big sweatshirt, some shorts with my hair undone and thrown up in a sad attempt at a bun, plus my large glasses. I usually never get any attention anyway, so I really didn't expect to with the lazy outfit I had put together. As I walked the dog toward a more grassy area, I passed the dumpster where a guy was standing. I acknowledged him, but left him to his business. As I passed him, he said, "Aw, I like your dog. What breed is he?" Man came up to pet the dog. If you've ever had a pet before, this isn't a suspicious interaction. It's very common. I put a friendly smile on my face and said, "Oh, I think he's a Chihuahua mix. It's my friend's dog." After he stopped petting the dog, I went to continue my walk, only he started following me. This had never happened to me before, so I understand if you think my next actions were really stupid. He walked faster to catch up with me, trying to continue the conversation about dogs. I was trying to be polite, but I was starting to get nervous. My stomach dropped when he asked where I lived. I tried to stay calm and act like it didn't bother me. I said, "Oh, I don't live here. I'm visiting my boyfriend." At that time, I turned toward my boyfriend's apartment, both to insinuate how close he was and to gauge how far I'd walked so far. He said, "Oh, I'm here helping my uncle move in. I bet your boyfriend wouldn't like me talking to you." I tried to nervously laugh, but I was realizing I needed to get the hell out of this situation. I didn't want to just freak out and run. I didn't know this guy. I didn't know if he had anything on him that could hurt me. I realized that I thankfully had my phone with me. I started walking toward a patch of grass for the dog to use. Before I could get there, the guy told me to stay still for a second. We were in an area of the complex next to some stairs. The grass was literally right in front of me, but I froze like an idiot. Again, I'd never been in this situation, and apparently, I had the survival skills of a peanut. He sat on the stairs and said, "Now your boyfriend can't see us," playing it off as a joke. He started talking, but I couldn't really focus on what he was saying. I was trying to find a way to leave the situation without getting hurt. I was scared that if I tried to run or pick up my phone, he tried to restrain me or hurt me in some way. I figured I needed to try to be calm and nonchalant. I finally said, hey, I need to go. The dog really has to go to the bathroom and I need to get back to my boyfriend. He didn't seem to fight against my request until he stood up. He said, well, can I have a hug goodbye? Before I could respond, he was wrapping his arms around me, pushing me up against the cement wall behind me. He was forcibly pressing his crotch against me, and like the idiot I felt like, I tensed and froze. I was so terrified as I realized how bad the situation truly was. If I didn't try to get away now, something terrible was going to happen to me. I tried to sound more stern, but it came out in a pathetic, I really need to go see my boyfriend. Thankfully, by the grace of God, he let go and backed away. All he said was, I'm sorry, and waved goodbye before he began to walk off. I walked into the grassy area I'd intended to reach, shaking. At this point, I could see the area of the complex where my boyfriend was, but not the apartment directly. I got my phone out, called my boyfriend, and began heading back to the house, looking around and behind me with every step. I told him to get out here now, that something had happened, and I was scared. He asked what happened, but I was afraid of that guy. Again, I was worried he had some type of weapon on him. If I told my boyfriend, he would immediately come out and try to beat that guy's ass. And I was terrified my boyfriend would get hurt. The guy was around my height, 5'6", and my boyfriend stands at a good 6'2" and is built. So he could have beaten that guy's ass. But again, that guy seemed fucking crazy. I didn't want to risk the guy having some type of weapon he could pull out. My boyfriend ran outside to me. He walked with me while we let the dog do his business, and we headed inside. The whole time, I was looking around like a maniac, terrified that guy would pop out of nowhere. We got back inside the house, and I finally told my boyfriend the situation. Just like I predicted, he got up to go out and beat that guy's ass. I begged him not to because I was terrified of him getting hurt, and he finally settled down and comforted me. After that, I saw the guy one more time, weeks later. My boyfriend and I were heading to my car to run an errand when a truck drove past. There, in the passenger seat, the guy was looking out the window, staring at me. He smiled and waved before the truck pulled off. It really gave me the creeps. I felt sick. I never saw him again, but I still look over my shoulder anywhere I go. Even if you think it's safe to walk around, there are weirdos out there. It doesn't matter what you wear or the time of day, they may still come after you. I never walked around that complex alone after that. I made terrible decisions in this situation that could have gotten me really hurt because I was young and naive. Despite this, it's been a couple of years, and I've learned from this experience. I won't put myself in that same position again. And to the guy who followed me, terrified me, and was overall a creep, let's not meet again. I want to begin by saying that I'm not entirely sure whether I was in danger during this incident. June 15th, 2015. I took my children to Toys R Us after school because they both had gift cards. We wandered around in the store for a bit. They both got lollipops and Pokemon cards. We left the store, and I helped them get into the car. They were 6 and 7 at the time. Before I could pull out of my parking spot, a blue Pontiac Montana van pulled in front of me, blocking me in. I didn't know what to think, but I was pretty annoyed. Just then, a man got out of the van and approached my window. I got a horrible feeling when he did this, so I kept my window up, just a crack, as he asked me questions about my car. How much did it cost, etc. He then showed me a thumb drive that had a label with my name on it. I had never seen it before. I had never seen this man before. He was missing teeth. This is the main thing I remember about him. He said the drive had 24 hours of photos and footage on it, and he would send it to the RCMP. I would never see my kids again if I didn't go with him to clear things up. I asked if it was a joke. His tone intensified, and he became agitated, insisting I go with him and saying, "Don't play dumb." He knew my daughter's name because he said it at one point. I pulled out my phone and started dialing 911. He said, "Oh, I can do that too," and pretended like he was going to pull out his phone. But then, when he saw I was actually calling, he rushed back to his van, and I saw he was on the phone with someone as he drove away. I spoke with 911, and they told me the police would take an hour to arrive since I said the man who had been bothering me had already left. I told them to meet me at home, not wanting to stay there any longer. When the police came by to see me at my house, they basically acted like I was crazy or a deadbeat. Nothing ever came of my report. Things I later learned because my dad and I did some investigating when the police would not. At the same time the van pulled in front of me to block me in, a gray truck had pulled behind me. Both vehicles left the parking lot at the same time. My email account had been hacked that morning. I had purchased this car from a dealership that had taken my photo when I bought it. It was a photo of me and my children in front of the car when it was new to me. The dealership, I only realized at this point, had posted the photo with my license plate visible and my full name. This incident messed me up for a very long time, and I am still not convinced it wasn't an attempted kidnapping of some sort. I am now 30, and I don't like to walk at night. I used to not really care as a child. I even remember playing with my cousins in front of my tia's house late into the night and walking with my brothers to the park down the street. When we lived in apartments along White Rock, my brothers and I would often walk around the lake as the sun was going down and make it back at night. Anyway, all this is to say, I didn't really feel uncomfortable at night until this incident. A little necessary background information. My parents are divorced and have been since I was about 9. My mother had full custody, and my dad got us on weekends and half the summer. I had avoided going to his house for much of my preteens, but by 15 or 16, I wanted to spend more time with him for some reason. So, it was at his house one summer in July that I decided to take a late night walk. I'm pretty sure it was midnight. He lived in a nice suburb outside of Dallas, Mesquite, and there was one road that led out of the neighborhood onto the main street. Then you would follow the main street and turn onto another street to make a full circle. I was feeling restless that night, so I grabbed my chihuahua and we went on a walk. It was quiet, but normal for the neighborhood at the time, which is different now, mind you. And I didn't think much of anything. It wasn't crazy hot, so I just walked down this neighborhood street, which was like one of the main entrances to the neighborhood. I was just looking around, nothing of note, very boring, normal suburb. trying to see which houses probably had the same floor plan as my dad's. As I was walking, I noticed this man driving into the neighborhood. He was driving a big truck, I think. It was red and had all his windows down. He had his hand out the window and looked right at me. It was so fast that he passed by, but something about how we looked at each other made me a little wary. I was very naive, a young girl walking at night, very dumb, yes, I know, and didn't trust my gut, which told me to walk back while I still was closer to home than to my journey's end. So I just kept going out to the main street. As I was walking, I started to feel like the mix of Texas heat and humidity was getting to me. Plus, the weird encounter with that man was making me uneasy. So I turned around and started walking back. About halfway back, I noticed that it seemed as if someone had their headlights on, lighting the side of the sidewalk I was going to be passing. But I couldn't see the vehicle past the house it was parked in front of, and I thought it was strange. When I actually reached the crosswalk, I looked and noticed it was the big red truck. He had his brights on, and I couldn't see in the truck. But what struck me as alarming was that you could tell he had parked hastily. It almost seemed as if he had turned onto the cross street and hadn't attempted to parallel park. So the back of his truck was far from the curb, but the front was only a few inches away. It was a great angle to shine the bright onto the corner I was walking on. It alarmed me so much that I felt my heart sink. I tried to remain calm and rush my dog along as we crossed the street. Then I sped up more as I walked further from the cross street. I heard his tires and the rumble of his engine as he tore out onto the street, and I knew that my gut instinct had been right. I grabbed my dog and carried her as I tried to run, but my chanclas were not holding up well. I stopped to take them off and carried them too, and I took off at a much faster pace. I looked to my right as he passed by, and it felt like the world slowed down. He stared right at me. He didn't look upset or anything. I just remember him looking so normal, as if this was just another day to him. But he did not look away from me as I ran and he drove by. I still remember his face. He had a round face, but prominent cheekbones with a mustache on his upper lip. He was Hispanic and had black hair. I can't recall his shirt or even what type of truck he drove, but this was also like over a decade ago, so anyway. He sped up and was making it to the end of the street before me. My dad's house was one house over from the house at the end of the street, which was a T intersection. I knew I had to get there before he did, but I also know I was not that fast. He was going to make it before me. My mind was racing, thinking of how I was going to get away. Then I remembered that my neighbor, who still lives in the house across the street, had just had their fence taken down to be redone. He was waiting at the end of the street for me, and I didn't hesitate. I cut in between my neighbor's house, which was the house in front of the stop sign he was waiting at, and ran into the alley. I stopped in the alley, where I could see my dad's house just a quick sprint away, but I was scared that if he saw me, I wouldn't make it. So I stood there, waiting for the sound of the truck driving off, and hoping he didn't take a left turn. I was out of breath. My dog was squirming, and I looked at my neighbor's glass backsliding door, hoping that if he came my way, I could make it to her door first. Coincidentally, she happened to be standing in the doorway, and she saw me. To this day, I'm not sure why this old woman Seeing a young teenage girl out of breath, holding her chihuahua and chanclas in her hands, didn't try to help. It seemed like she and I stood there for a good minute, and then I heard the truck getting further away. I booked it to my dad's house. The door wasn't locked, and my dad was on the couch. I ran inside and told him everything. I'm sure I was a very confused, babbling mess, but he believed me. He, my dog, and I got into the car and drove around the neighborhood to see if we could spot the guy, but nothing. Still, I was so shaken. I hugged my dog close that night and have never forgotten this encounter. I think because of the almost park kidnapping incident, I am very wary of out of place people. And now, because of this incident, I won't go walking at night or around sundown without someone else. Either way it goes, if you happen to go walking at night, please be aware of your surroundings and stay safe. I work full-time in healthcare, which is a high-stress job. It can be quite overwhelming and physically, mentally draining. So, on my days off, to de-stress and relax, I love to go on drives by the ocean by myself or with my best friend. Most of the time, we go late at night to watch the stars or the moon, or simply to listen to the ocean. It resets our brains, relieves stress, and the long chats and laughs we share are so memorable and special. But then something happened a couple of days ago, and it's made me rethink doing those beloved night drives. It was a cold, dark November night. Usually I got off work at around 11, but tonight I was leaving around 1 a.m. The perks of working in healthcare. I worked in a tiny town about an hour west of the big city. I lived about 45 minutes away and was dreading the drive home. It was very windy out that night, and as I left work, brown leaves swirled around me in the parking lot. I shivered, pulling my jacket tighter around me as I slid into the front seat of my car. When my coworker had come in to relieve me, she had advised me to take the old highway home, not my usual route on the new highway. It's so windy, my car almost blew off the highway, she had said. The old highway ran almost parallel to the new one, except it snaked through thick forests and wound along the coastline. Normally, it would take me 45 minutes to get home, but taking the old highway would take at least an hour. But I wasn't worried about time. I was just worried about making it home safely. As I drove, my headlights illuminated the thick trees lining the road. The wind would make my car sway every now and then, making me grip the wheel tighter. All I could think about was the warmth of my bed, and I sighed, turning on my Bluetooth to listen to one of my podcasts. There was no one else on the road, and a car hadn't gone by in over 20 minutes. There were no street lamps on the old highway, and it was always very dark, with thick forest on either side. Little beaches and a house every now and then. About 10 minutes later, I passed through a tiny town, if you could even call it a town. It had a grocery store, a drugstore, a couple of restaurants, and an old gas station. It was a tiny trailer with a couple of pumps that sold cheap cigarettes, closing around 8 p.m. As I drove past the gas station, I noticed the first vehicle I had seen in a while, an old truck idling in the gravel parking lot. This wasn't unusual, as it was a fishing town, and lobster season was starting. But as I drove by, I could see the outline of someone sitting in the truck. It gave me a weird sense of comfort to know I wasn't the only one awake and on the roads at this time. I kept on driving, but I could feel myself growing very tired. About 10 minutes ahead, there was a little beach that I loved. So I decided to pull over and stop for a few minutes to have a quick smoke. The cold air and the sound of the waves would probably do a better job of waking me up than my podcast would. Plus, it was stormy out, so the waves would be huge, and I loved watching the ocean's magnificent waves pummel the coastline during a storm. I pulled into the gravel parking lot by the beach and parked at the very end. There was no one else there, and as I parked, I put down my window and lit my smoke. I stepped out of the car for a few moments to try and get a glimpse of the waves, but the wind was so strong, it almost took my breath away. The cold air was harsh as it hit my face, but it did its job by waking me up. But that was enough for me. I shivered and got back into the car, turning the heat on high. I breathed in the cold, salty air and finally felt myself relax. It had been a rough shift, and I was grateful to have a few days off after tonight. About halfway through my smoke, headlights swept across my car as another vehicle pulled into the parking lot. It parked about 100 yards away from me and idled for a few minutes before turning off. I was plunged into darkness again, with no sound except for the crashing waves and the wind. All of a sudden, I started to get an uneasy feeling in my stomach, and I was unsure why. It was not uncommon for another vehicle to be here at this hour, as a lot of people come to the beach late at night, myself included. Some would walk along the beach in the moonlight, or smoke a joint around a little fire, or young couples would come and mess around in their cars. But still, I felt uneasy. I glanced at the time. It was 1:40 a.m. Shivering to myself, I lit up another smoke and leaned back in my seat, trying to ignore the growing heaviness in my stomach. But I was enjoying the sound of the waves and was reluctant to leave just yet. I'll leave after I finish this smoke, I said to myself. Usually, the beach was lit up by the moonlight, but tonight it was so dark. The only sounds were the waves hitting the beach and the wind whistling through my car. After a few moments, I thought I heard the sound of gravel crunching, but I looked around and didn't see anything. I shrugged and rubbed my eyes, suddenly feeling tired again. I was almost done with my smoke, so I put my foot on the brake to start my car. The red light of my brakes illuminated something through my rearview mirror for just a split second, or at least I thought I had seen something. But when I looked back again, there was nothing there. I shook my head and tossed my smoke out of the car, laughing to myself. It's all these true crime podcasts I've been listening to. They must be getting to me, I thought as I put the car in reverse. I glanced at my side mirror before reversing, and my heart almost dropped into my stomach. There, illuminated by the red light, was the figure crouched down, leaning against the side of my car near the brake light. He seemed to be slowly inching closer to the driver's door. A jolt of fear ran through me, and I froze for a second. Then, fight or flight kicked in, and my body chose flight. I slammed my foot on the gas, and my car reversed quickly. The figure jumped out of the way, and as I switched the gear to drive, my headlights illuminated a man in a dark sweater and jeans running toward the other vehicle. It was the truck I had seen earlier at the gas station. My heart sank, and I felt sick to my stomach as I floored it out of the parking lot and back onto the road. I was terrified. I was about 20 minutes from home, and the old highway was basically one long winding road with very few side streets and not many options to hide in case he was following me. My eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror, praying I wouldn't see headlights behind me. But after a few moments, there they were. My stomach dropped again, and I increased my speed. There had to be a road up ahead I could quickly turn into and hide. Luck must have been on my side because as I turned a sharp bend, the headlights disappeared from my rear view momentarily, and I could see a little gravel road quickly coming up on the left. I yanked the steering wheel left, barely braking, and turned, gunning it up the little road. The road was so narrow, it would only fit one car, and I was relieved to see it had many turns, which would hide me from the main road. After getting a few hundred yards down the road, I quickly shut off my lights and rolled to a stop. I sat there, shaking, in total darkness, praying I wouldn't see the headlights come up the road behind me. It was silent, except for my harsh breathing. My heart was pounding. I rolled down my window and listened. It was quiet, and all I could hear was the wind blowing through the trees. I could not stop shaking. I wasn't a religious person, but I sat there praying I wouldn't see those headlights, praying to just make it home safely to my warm bed, praying for this all to just be a nightmare. With nothing but darkness and forest surrounding me, I waited. 10 minutes went by, then 20. Nothing. The tension in my body eased, and the sinking feeling in my stomach started to fade. I gave myself another 10 minutes, took some deep breaths, and then turned on my car, keeping my lights low. I had to do almost a 10-point turn to get myself turned back around on the narrow road. But I somehow managed it and slowly drove down the little road back to the main road. As I came to the main road, I hesitated. I could see a few kilometers in each direction as the road snaked around the coastline, and I didn't see any vehicles on the road. I took a deep breath and turned left toward home. The whole drive back, I was tense, but I did not see that old truck again. Only two cars passed me. One, a police officer, and the other, a Jeep. But I made it safely home. As I pulled into my driveway and turned off my car, I made a promise to myself to never go to that beach at night again. Some people just have bad intentions, and unfortunately, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Back in March of this year, I attended a non-academic event on campus with my friends. The attendees were mostly students from the humanities and arts fields, which made us stand out, as we were the only ones who were computer science students. After the event, my friends and I went to the library, which is a few floors below the venue, to work on our coding assignments on our laptops. While doing so, a familiar face was staring at me from about 25 feet away across from our table. I remember seeing this guy from the event. He was an art student, judging by his ID lanyard. Lanyards are designed based on college. I didn't mind at first, until I noticed that his eyes were locked on me, and he only looked away whenever I tried to look back at him. This lasted throughout my entire stay in the library, which was about an hour until the next class started. The second encounter happened when I was in class, and he was peeking through the window door, staring at me as he walked past the classroom where I was. I didn't care at first, until it made me distracted in class as he consistently walked by in the corridor a couple of times until our class ended and he disappeared. What was even creepier was the fact that Art students on my university campus mostly have their classes in the humanities building, as opposed to as computer science students in the engineering and computer studies building, which made it questionable why he was there in the first place. I thought that was the end of my encounters with him. However, the third encounter happened after gym class, when I went to the restroom to change clothes. I noticed that the guy was behind me, and I completely ignored him as I walked into the corridor toward the restroom. While changing in the cubicle, I noticed that my previously worn shirt, which was drenched in my sweat, had disappeared from the cubicle's door where I had hung it. It turned out that the creep had followed me to the restroom, pulled it down, sniffed it, and dropped it on the floor when he rushed out of the restroom the moment I tried to confront him. I finally had enough of this guy, so I decided it was time to file a complaint against him in the disciplinary office of my university. The following week, I visited there to ask for a complaint form. However, to my surprise, he had been expelled from campus the day before I visited. It turned out I wasn't the only victim. The staff there said he got expelled for sexually assaulting another male student from a different college. I am an alcoholic, and I have been sober for 9 years. That is, without a doubt, my proudest accomplishment. I started getting help during my sophomore year of high school. Looking back, I am so grateful for the timing. If I had hit rock bottom later, things would have only gotten worse. My parents actually transferred me to a different school so I could start fresh and meet new people. By the time I turned 18, a few months before graduation, I had already been sober for over 2 years. That was around the time I started aging out of most teen recovery programs. A lot of the counselors I worked with only focused on youth cases, so I had to start finding adult support groups. I grew up in Los Angeles, and not the touristy part. My neighborhood had liquor stores every few blocks and corner stores with thick plexiglass windows. Alcoholism was really common and normalized there. So, once the teen programs ended for me, I started going to early morning AA meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They were held in a small church near my school. I did not have first period on those days, so it worked out perfectly. After the meetings, I would usually stay for a couple extra minutes to write in my journal or just sit in quiet. One morning, this guy stayed after the meeting and asked me what I was writing. I told him I was journaling. He said he liked the idea and wanted to try it himself. After that, he started sitting next to me at every meeting. He would talk a bit afterwards. He seemed normal. He was about my age. He knew I was about to graduate and asked if I had planned to keep coming to that group during the summer. I told him I was not sure yet. I had just gotten a job across town and was looking into meetings closer to where I would be working. I could tell he did not love that answer. Sometimes you can just see disappointment on people's faces. I used to talk a lot in those meetings. I did not go just to sit in silence. I brought energy into that room. I like to think I helped people feel a little bit better. I think he felt that too, and I think that is why he did not want me to leave. People have told me I talk too much, so maybe I'm just flattering myself and everyone else wanted me to be quiet. But I like to think I was making a difference. He asked again when I would be switching to a different group. I said I did not know yet. I told him I planned to keep coming through the end of the school year. I do not remember if I ever told him the name of my school, but I always wore royal blue and gold. He knew I went to school nearby, just around the corner from the church. It would not have been hard to figure out. Then, in the last 2 weeks of my senior year, everything got wild. We had senior ditch day, late night hangouts, sleepovers, goodbye parties, etc. I missed the AA meetings at the church, and then I switched AA groups altogether. At graduation, everything was great, but that guy showed up. It was so off. He did not know me like that. I had never invited him. We were not close, but there he was, smiling at me from the back like he was completely normal. He came over afterwards, said he brought a gift. It was a box of chocolates and a note about how much he would miss me. He said I should drop by the meetings again sometime. I uncomfortably said something like, "Thank you." I never went back. That whole situation was too weird. I did not want to see him again. Then he showed up at my new job. I was working the cosmetics counter at a big department store. The cosmetics department actually had its own cash register. The first time he walked by, I noticed him. Then he came back the next day, and the day after that. He never spoke or asked for help. He just wandered around near my station, looking over at me like it was no big deal. He did not even try to be subtle. Eventually, I told one of my coworkers, the type of woman who does not play. She walked right up to him and asked what he thought he was doing. She called him out in front of everybody. She said she knew exactly why he was there and that it was creepy and toxic. A few shoppers turned around to see what was going on. His face turned red, and he walked away without saying anything. We told our manager afterward. The manager was glad we spoke up, but reminded us to let her know right away next time. There was no next time, though, since he never came back. I have not seen him since. Hopefully, he got bored and moved on. I do not really care to find out what he wanted. I'm a freelance photographer. Not a big name, not even a small one, really. Just one of those invisible hands behind a camera who captures things other people overlook. I prefer it that way. Anonymity suits me, or at least it used to. The job was simple. A client reached out, said they wanted a series of photographs of Bristol. No specifics, just a sweeping visual essay of the city's old bones and new skin. Odd? Yes. Usually clients are more particular. Focus on architecture or capture the essence of urban life, that sort of thing. This client said I could use my own taste. That should have been the first red flag. But the price was generous, stupidly so. They bought one of my most expensive packages without negotiation. I chalked it up to luck. Maybe someone finally recognized my eye. That brief glint of self-flattery didn't last long. I took the train from Paddington to Bristol Temple Meads. It's almost 2 hours. Normally I'd nap or people watch. That day I stared out the window, but I couldn't tell you what I saw. There was a weird stillness clinging to the edges of my thoughts. I should have listened to it. Once in Bristol, I wondered. I've always had a knack for finding photogenic corners, graffiti-drenched alleys, derelict courtyards, brutalist skeletons wedged between Victorian facades. The city unfolded before me, frame by frame, and I lost myself in it. I was proud of the shots. They were some of my best work. until I started reviewing them. A man, same face, same deadpan stare, had photobombed several of them. It wasn't obvious at first. He was never in the foreground, never close, but always there, lingering just out of focus, head turned toward the lens like he knew the exact moment I clicked the shutter. Thing is, I moved constantly. He shouldn't have been able to keep up. I'd walked, cabbed, even doubled back. He had no reason to be in every borough I visited. Yet, there he was, always watching, always still. And the worst part, I didn't remember ever seeing him, as if he only existed through my camera. I isolated those shots, keeping them separate from the main set. The client got their polished photos, none with the stranger in them. A week passed. I figured the job was done. Then the client emailed. They wanted the rejects. No one asks for the rejects, not even to be polite. They're often raw, blurry, or technically flawed, and photographers, real ones, don't share them. It's like showing someone their first draft of your soul. I hesitated, explained the situation, told them it cost extra to process the leftovers. They paid immediately. I delivered the batch, including the ones with the stranger. That was the last time I bent my rules, or so I thought. A few days later, I was editing shots from a friend's wedding in St. James's Park when I nearly dropped my mouse. He was there again. Same man, same look, right into the lens. I knew for a fact he hadn't been a guest. He was a ghost in the frame. How did he even know where I'd be? The next day, another email from the Bristol client. They wanted more shots. Specific locations this time. Remote areas scattered across the city. Places only locals or obsessive researchers would know. Again, the money came fast. Too fast. I went. But this time, something shifted. That first day in Bristol, I felt alone, safe behind my lens. Now, I felt watched, hunted. My camera weighed heavier around my neck. The air was thicker, denser. I could feel heat, imagery or not, boring into the back of my left shoulder, a phantom red dot that never blinked. Still, I finished the shoot. I left my bag unattended once, just once. A quick shot of the harbor side demanded both hands, and the bench behind me seemed safe enough. I didn't think twice, until the train ride home. Inside my camera bag was a plain envelope. No name, no logo, nothing but weight. Inside, Polaroids of me. At the wedding, on the underground, entering my own building. Some shots were taken from above, others from eye level, as though he had been standing beside me. None of them I recognized taking. None of them should exist. I was terrified. There was no denying it anymore. I was being stalked, systematically. I emailed the client shaking, asked plainly, "What do you want?" The reply came instantly. "Ah, you knew it was me. How touching." I stared at the screen until the text burned into my retinas. I wrote again, "Tell me what you want. I'll refund everything. Just leave me alone." Another reply. "I don't want your money. I want you to be seen. I want to be in your pictures. Forever." No more emails. You'll hear from me when you need to. I blocked him, but he used new emails again and again, each more unhinged than the last. We're bound now. I'm already in your lens. You can't crop me out. I shut everything down. My site, my socials, even my client listings. Went off grid. Stayed with a friend in Scotland. No contact. No strange emails. No appearances. I thought I had escaped. I hadn't. The message came 3 weeks later. Glad you're home. I've missed being in the frame. That's when I lost it. I cracked. I wrote back. Let's meet. Paddington, tomorrow, I want to see you. The reply was instant. Finally. Can we take photos together? My hands trembled as I typed. Yes, of course. I'll be there early. I arrived 30 minutes early, tried to blend in, acted like a clueless tourist, snapping casual selfies. I checked each one obsessively. Then I saw him. Third row back, blurred but unmistakable. The man. My man. I started snapping rapidly, shot after shot, camera shaking in my hands. Then, nothing. He vanished from the crowd, like smoke between ribs, until I felt it again. That heat, that phantom red dot on my shoulder. I froze. Something told me not to turn. Not yet. I waited. Then, in one single motion, I spun and snapped. Once, twice. There he was, fully visible, his face no longer deadpan. It was delighted, but it twisted in an instant. He covered his face and fled. He ran. He ran. I chased him through Paddington's buzzing chaos, screaming like a madman. You wanted to be seen, right? Then let them see you. He vanished past the crowd, slipping through the crush of people like water through fingers. But I had 2 shots. Clear, clean. I took them to the police. They listened. Politely. Took the photos and emails, filed a report, and told me, in as many words, that there wasn't much they could do until something actually happened. Something had already happened. He knew where I lived, where I worked, where I breathed. I moved, changed numbers, never worked another job in Bristol. It's been nearly a year. No more emails, no more strangers in my shots. But I can't let my guard down, because every time I raise my lens, every time I hear the shutter click, I still check the edges of the frame. I crop tighter now. I blur the backgrounds. I avoid mirrors, windows, anything reflective. Because sometimes, just sometimes, when I'm not paying attention, he's there, waiting, watching, smiling into the lens, and I swear, his face is getting closer. I've been a landlord in San Francisco for nearly 40 years, a working class guy born in the Mission, scraping by on the rent from a couple of tired apartment buildings. They're nothing fancy, cracked plaster, creaky floors, the kind of places that hold stories in their walls. I've seen every type of tenant. Hippies chasing dreams, tech bros chasing millions, deadbeats chasing excuses. Most come and go, leaving behind late notices or furniture too heavy to haul. But one tenant, a kid in apartment 2B back in 1989, left something else, a shadow that clings to me, a memory that burns like acid, a story I can't shake no matter how many years pass. His name was James, a scrawny grad student in his mid-20s, all wire-rimmed glasses and nervous smiles. He showed up with a deposit, solid references, and a quiet voice, saying he was studying chemistry, molecules, compounds, things I didn't understand. He promised to keep to himself, and I believed him. He seemed like the perfect tenant, the kind you'd forget about. For 4 months, he was. Rent arrived on time, no parties, no complaints. He was just a name on a lease, a ghost in my building. Then the trouble started, slow and insidious, like a leak you don't notice until the floor's ruined. It began with Maria, the bartender in 3B, right above James. She called one morning, her voice sharp with irritation, saying a smell was seeping into her apartment. Chemical, like burnt plastic, choking and foul. She traced it to 2B, to James. I figured it was a one-off, maybe a spilled cleaner or a kitchen mishap. I'd seen stranger things in my buildings. I promised to check it out and knocked on James's door that afternoon. No answer. I slipped a note under, asking him to call. He didn't. A week later, Maria called again, angrier now, saying the smell had worsened, clinging to her clothes, her curtains, her skin. She couldn't open her windows without gagging. I left a message on James's answering machine, firm but fair, citing the lease's inspection clause and warning him to cooperate. He called back that night, his voice thin, saying he was swamped with research, asking for the weekend. I agreed, but with a threat of eviction if he didn't follow through. Harsh, maybe, but I had a building to run, tenants to protect. That Saturday, I finally got into 2B, and what I saw stopped me cold. James opened the door, looking like he'd been dragged through hell. Bloodshot eyes, greasy hair, a stained shirt that reeked of sweat and something sharper. The smell hit me like a wall, a rancid mix of bleach and rot, thick enough to taste. His kitchen wasn't a kitchen anymore. It was a laboratory, alien and wrong. Glass beakers and test tubes cluttered the counters. Bunsen burners hissed, bottles of unpronounceable liquids glowed under flickering lights. Wire snaked everywhere, feeding a buzzing machine that looked like it belonged in a mad scientist's lair, not a rent-controlled apartment. I demanded to know what he was doing. Research, he said, his voice flat, warning me not to touch anything. I thought drugs, meth maybe, but he swore it was legal, even invited the cops to inspect. Lethal or not, it was a problem. The fumes drifting up to Maria's place poisoned the air. I told him to shut it down by month's end, or he was out. He nodded, mumbling about scaling back, his eyes avoiding mine. I left, the smell clinging to my clothes, a bad feeling settling in my gut. I thought that was the end, but I was wrong. Dead wrong. Less than a week later, Maria called again, her voice shaking, near tears. The smell was back, worse than ever. Not just chemicals, but something darker, like death itself. It's like something's dying down there, she said, and the words sent a chill through me. I sighed, rubbing my temples, and told her I was done playing games. I'd served James eviction papers by the end of the month. She sounded relieved, her voice softening. But an hour later, she called again, and this time she was screaming. James is up there, yelling like he's hurt. I called 911, but you need to know. My stomach dropped, a sick, twisting dread taking hold. I grabbed my keys and sped to the building, the city blurring past, my mind racing with images of fire, of blood, or something I couldn't name. When I arrived, the street was chaotic. Cop cars, an ambulance, neighbors crowding the sidewalk, their whispers buzzing like flies. I pushed through, telling a young cop I owned the building, offering proof from my car. He waved me off, saying to wait, his face pale, his eyes darting to the stairwell. Maria found me in the crowd, her hands trembling as she thanked me for coming. They broke into his apartment, she said, but they won't say what's inside. I waited, calming other tenants, promising they'd be back into their homes very soon. After what felt like forever, the young cop told me to expect a call from a detective. I drove home, the weight of not knowing pressing down, the building's silence louder than the sirens. That evening, a detective called, his voice heavy. James was dead. The world hit like a punch, turning my anger to guilt, my confusion to horror. I'd been ready to evict him, to wash my hands of him, and now he was gone. The detective asked about the last time I saw James, about his lab, his behavior. I told him everything. The smell, the equipment, the way James looked like he was unraveling. He didn't give much back, only that they suspected murder, though they weren't sure. He warned me to stay at up 2B until the investigation was done. I didn't argue. The thought of going near that place made my skin crawl. Days crawled by, the apartment off limits, rumors spreading like wildfires. Maria said she'd heard cops mention burns, strange marks. Another tenant swore they saw hazmat suits going in, their faces hidden behind visors. I tried to focus on work, on leaks and late rent, but my mind kept drifting to 2B, to what James had been doing, to what had killed him. When the police finally cleared the scene, I went in, expecting chaos. Instead, the apartment was sterile, stripped bare. The lab was gone. Beakers, burners, bottles, all taken. It was like James had never existed, erased from the world, except for one thing: the bathtub. It was old cast iron, coated in enamel, standard for my units. But this one was different. Black, charred streaks marred its surface, curling into the shape of a body. A silhouette burned so deep it scarred the metal. The rest of the bathroom was pristine. No smoke, no ash, just that awful outline, like a shadow seared into eternity. I stood there, my breath shallow, a cold unease creeping over me. My hand shook as I locked the door behind me. That tub had to go. I paid $800 to replace it, a fortune I didn't have, but I didn't care. I couldn't rent 2B with that thing staring back. The cops closed the case weeks later, calling it an accident. James, they said, had been warned about lab safety at his university, something about volatile compounds. They figured he was running a rogue experiment, maybe cooking drugs, and it backfired. He jumped into the tub to douse the flames, but it was too late. It sounded plausible, a tragedy of hubris, like Icarus flying too close to the sun. But it didn't add up. I'm no scientist, but I know fire. How does a blaze scar metal but leave the rest of the apartment untouched? What kind of chemical fire laughs at water? And why was James screaming? Not for help, but in pain, in terror. I dug deeper, asking around, and found a guy who knew James at school. He said James was obsessed, not with drugs, but with rewriting matter, breaking down life's building blocks and reshaping them. He thought he was close, the guy said, close to cracking it. The words chilled me. What was James chasing? Something so dangerous, even his professors wouldn't touch it. What had he unleashed in 2B? Something that burned him into the tub, that left a smell no cleaner could erase. Life moved on. I got a new tub, new tenants, but they never stayed long. They'd complain of faint chemical smells, acrid and lingering. No matter how much I scrubbed, I smell it too. Faint but undeniable, like a ghost in the walls. Fixing leaks or collecting rent, I'd see that burnt silhouette clear as day. I'd found it. A warning I couldn't unsee. I added a clause to my rental agreement, banning volatile chemicals, and tenants would laugh, call it odd. I'd smile, but my eyes stayed cold. My mind on James, on what he'd done, on what had done him. I still run those buildings, still hear the city's pulse, but 2B changed me. I wonder what James found, what he woke up in that lab, what watched him as he burned. Was it an accident or something older, hungrier, drawn to his ambition? I don't know. But I know the smell lingers, the shadow waits, and the rules I write are written in blood. Whatever you were, James, whatever you brought into my building, let's not meet again. Not in this world or the next. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true scary stories. I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge and thank the rest of the members of Back to Ashes. Thank you all so much for all your dedicated support and love. I see you all in the comments here and there. So there's just no other words but thank you. Because without you, I wouldn't have a voice and this channel would not exist. I'd be sitting here talking to myself, which I really don't like to do. So thank you all so much. It goes beyond appreciation. I can't put it into words. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you are awake, I hope you've enjoyed this collection. Until next time, please stay vigilant and take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.